All righty. I guess with no further ado, why don't we go ahead and have our special guest. Now, we invited Ms. Barnes to speak to us. We asked her to go ahead and say whatever remarks she had prepared first, and then after that, we're going to open it up to questions from the group. We've got a few questions on behalf of the club we want to ask, and then anybody from the group that wants to ask a question. And like Lauren indicated, you can ask a question two ways. You can either click that blue raise hand icon in the participants window, or you can chat Lauren directly and tell her that you'd like to ask a question. Or if you want Lauren to ask a question for you, you can type the whole question out to her. But everybody knows Lavora Barnes, chair of the Michigan Democratic Party. Let's give her a nice welcome. Welcome, Lavora.
Thanks so much, Tom. Thank you, everybody. It is so great to be here. So great to see so many faces. We spend so much time in our homes now. It's kind of a thrill to see people at all, frankly. I hope everybody's safe and well. I hope your families are all safe and well. We're all following the governor's directions and social distancing and wearing our masks and washing our hands. Please continue to do that. I am so impressed with how our local clubs, our county parties, our district parties, our volunteers have all made this switch to doing events and meetings like this virtually. This is a terrific way for us to connect while we can't connect in person. And so good on all of us for figuring out how to do this, and good on you guys for setting this up. You know, while all this is happening, this election is coming at us. It's not going to move no matter what Donald Trump wants. We're going to have this election in November because A, the Constitution says we will, and B, because we have got to turn this man out in order to save lives, in order to save our country. Now more than ever, I think you all know, it matters who we elect. We see this every day as we watch the governor that we elected in 2018 do such a magnificent job leading this state through this crisis. And as we watch the nut job we elected in 2016 attempt to ruin this nation by such a bad response to this. And you know, he's coming to town, he comes to Michigan, or sends someone to Michigan pretty regularly. A lot of that is because of the work that folks like you have done on the ground. He knows Michigan is not in the win column for him right now. He's desperate to hold on to it because of the victory he got here in 2016. He wants to win Michigan again. It's frightening to me that this president who refuses to wear a mask, who refuses to social distance, thinks it's safe to come here and have an event like this. And it's even more frightening to me for the workers, our UAW brothers and sisters who work in that plant, who are going to be exposed to whatever he's bringing in with his entourage. All that said, we can't let up. We have to keep doing the work we know we need to do because this election is coming. We have to be able to organize. We have to be able to pull ourselves together to continue having conversations with our friends and neighbors about the importance of this election more than any other election, this election. So on our end here at the party, we have continued to grow our coordinated campaign, which I think you all know we call the One Campaign now. We have about 60 staff on the ground. By June 1st, there will be 90 organizers on the ground. And by on the ground, I mean in their homes, on their computers. They're all virtual organizers now who are helping us with phone calls and text messages and social media and events like this one all over the state, talking to voters about the importance of this election. And when I say all of the state, I want to be clear, you know, with our Project 83 organizers, we intend to run a full coordinated campaign all over this state. We know that there are good Democrats. We need to find and turn out to elect Democrats up and down the ballot everywhere, not just in a few counties downstate. But we have to work hard in those counties downstate as well, because that's where the majority of the votes are. Our state has decided that she's going to mail everyone in the state who's a registered voter an absentee ballot application. This is huge. This is such big and good news for democracy here in Michigan. When folks get these absentee ballots in their hands, we're going to ask them to check both boxes, to check the August box and the November box, so that they get a ballot not only for the primary in August, but also in November. This is an important part of our turnout strategy. The more folks we can get signed up to get that ballot in November, the less work we have to do to get them to get that ballot in November, between August and November. So that's the work our coordinated campaign team is going to be doing. They've recruited thousands of volunteers and will continue to recruit thousands of volunteers to make phone calls and text messages and reach out to folks, encouraging them to get on these absentee voter lists, to get this absentee ballot application filled out and returned, and get those ballots in their hands. such an important part of making sure that we get this election taken care of in the safest way for our voters and for our election workers. Let's get as many people as possible voting from the safety of their homes rather than standing in line on election day. Winning at the top, though, when we turn out Donald Trump, doesn't necessarily mean that everyone wins down the ballot. And that's why it's so important that we build this coordinated campaign that reaches all the way down the ballot. And I know you guys hear us say this every cycle, and we got better at it in 2018 than I think we have been in all the years that I've been working in politics in Michigan. And we're going to keep getting better at it. We're going to coordinate with the Biden team. We've got a conversation with them coming up this week to start talking about their role here in Michigan and what their operation will look like. We're working hard with Gary Peters' team because it's so important that we return him to the U.S. Senate. You know, once we've elected President Biden, he's going to need that Senate to help him move progress because of the mess that's been made. It's going to take him a while, but he's going to need the support of the U.S. Senate. We've got to return Haley Stevens and Alyssa Slotkin. I'm very excited about how terrific those two candidates are. They're doing such a great job as members of Congress and as candidates, but we've got to support them. And then we've got some opportunities in the congressional side here in Michigan. There are seats on the west side, and Hillary Scholten in the 3rd and John Hoadley in the 6th, and then Gretchen Driscoll in the 7th here where I live in Washtenaw County. These are places where we think we can make inroads and pick up a seat or two and grow our majority in the House. And then speaking of houses, we've got to pick up 4 state House seats. We need to give Governor Whitmer at least one chamber that will help her fix the problems of Michigan and move things forward. She made promises to the voters in 2018 that she intends to keep, that she's attempted to keep, but that this legislature has blocked her every step of the way. We need to get her a state house, 4 seats. We'll do that. And then we don't talk about it enough, but we've got to pick up a Supreme Court seat because in the end, so much of this turns into litigation. You see it everywhere where it's about vote by mail. You know, watch somebody try to sue our Secretary of State for sending out these absentee ballots or other issues. It all winds up in the Supreme Court. So it's so important that we pick up that Supreme Court seat. Our endorsements in Supreme Court will come out next week, and we're very excited to start working on those races. The eyes of the nation, frankly, the eyes of the world are on Michigan right now because of our close margin in 2016, because of the terrific work we've done since then, because of the great victories we had in 2018. There's a lot of attention. Trump doesn't want to lose, and so he's going to put everything he's got into winning Michigan. He's going to put everything he's got into helping John James, who's now pretending to distance himself from Trump. I don't know if you've seen that. Funny to watch. They're coming after us as hard as they can because they're afraid to lose us, because losing us means losing the White House, because the road to the White House runs right through Michigan. So we have to work together as hard as we can right now from our homes and eventually, hopefully, back out in our neighborhoods, talking to our friends and our neighbors and our family members about the importance of this election and helping them all get a ballot in their hands and get voting. It's so important this year. I would love to take whatever questions you all have. I want as much time for questions as possible because you don't need to listen to me yak at you. You need me to answer the questions you want answered. So tell me what it is you'd like to know.
I'll go first and give everybody a chance to think up something. We just have one, really, we had our club, we'd put some questions together, just one left because you touched on the other ones, but a lot of us, we volunteer, we knock on doors and so on. And what will voter ID and GOTV look like during this pandemic? For example, are there any social distancing guidelines for door knocking or any plan to come up with something like that?
So we've actually started talking about that because as the governor starts to open up the state, we're hoping to get to a point where we can talk about what it looks like to actually go door to door again. I think one of the questions that looms in my mind is, will voters be ready to see us at their doors? Will voters be ready to open that door and have that conversation with us during this? But I imagine that we will have volunteers who are in gloves and masks at these doors. The gloves will be important because we always have a piece of lit we want to hand them and we want them to feel comfortable taking that piece of lit from us. And of course the mask is important for all the reasons we know those masks are important. And so we're looking at ways that we can help provide some of that PPE for our volunteers who want to go out and knock doors when it's time. I think it's going to be interesting to see how many people are ready and willing to knock those doors in addition to how many people are ready and willing to see us at their doors. But I'm building a program. We're paying all these organizers. We're going to continue to grow this team on the coordinated campaign with the full expectation that we will run a full field program out on the doors. At the same time, though, Tom, we've got to be collecting, and we're doing that. We're collecting our IDs on the phones right now. We're having good success. People are picking up the phones because they're home. So it's working, but nothing is as good as that face-to-face conversation. So I'm really excited to eventually get safe enough where we can get back out there and have those conversations on the doors.
Then the board asked me to offer you, we would be happy to serve as experimenters if you want to send people out and see what happens. But
I appreciate that. That's good to know. I will make a note. We'll start in Royal Oak. You guys will help us figure out how this works. It's good. What else?
see who else has a question for Lavora. And go ahead, and again, if you have a question, you can either click that raise hand icon. That'll get you up to the top of the list where Lauren can recognize you. William Asher, could you unmute William Asher? William Asher, go ahead with your question as soon as Lauren unmutes you.
Recently the coordinator for the One campaign for, I guess, for Oakland County left. I'm wondering if there's a replacement for her.
Okay, yeah, Karen did leave, yes. Jason Ellenberg, who's our coordinated campaign director, sent me a couple of names. I honestly cannot remember the names right now, but he is in the process of hiring, or perhaps has hired, a regional field director for Oakland. We may actually end up with two. Oakland is such a big county with so many voters that we found in 2018 it was helpful to divide the territory a little bit. So we may end up with two folks in Oakland, but yes, Jason is very close if he has not already made an offer and gotten someone hired.
Ian Duncanson, go ahead, please.
Hi, my question was, so I worked as an election inspector and I was excited to do so for the first time in the presidential primary this year, just before everything went haywire. And I'm curious to what degree the MDP is involved in mobilizing Democratic election inspectors, should there still be in-person voting in August and November?
It's a really great question, Ian, and thank you for doing that. Yes, we are still recruiting folks to do that work because we do expect that at minimum, as we saw in May, there will have to be at least one polling place open in each jurisdiction, because our law now requires that you can register and vote on the same day. So there has to be a place for you to go to do that. So yes, we will continue to need election inspectors and volunteers to do that work. And also because we're going to vote by mail in such large numbers, we need folks who are willing to watch the absentee counting as well, right? Because that process is going to probably take days because there are going to be so many, and we need people who are willing to dedicate some time to sitting in and paying attention to that process. So our voter protection team is continuing to recruit volunteers to do that sort of work. We need as many people as possible on board to help us do all of that kind of work. And probably up until then, there are things that team could also use help with. I know we were just talking to Erica, who's our director, and she's got volunteer projects now. So if folks have time, reach out. Erica would love the help.
So just as a follow-up to that, I'm curious, is it better for us to try and coordinate, those of us who've done it before, to coordinate with our local election, like precinct captain, or is there a resource within the MDP that we should reach out to connect for those specific efforts?
That's a really good question. So Erica Pearsman is our voter protection director, and her team is responsible for organizing those sorts of election day efforts. So our preference, although I would love for you to connect with your precinct delegate because they are doing such terrific work, but what we would prefer is if you reach out to Erica so that she knows where she's got folks, because one of the things that she's going to try to do is make sure we're covering as much territory as possible. But if she doesn't know you've volunteered to be somewhere, she can't mark it off of her list and move on to other locations. So please contact Erica and her team and let them know you're willing to volunteer. Thank you.
Alrighty. And Shanae Watson Whitaker, you can go ahead and ask your question, the one you put in the chat.
Good evening, everyone. I wanted to ask you, Lavora, you stated that you're hiring more organizers. How many are actually from Michigan? What are the percentage of Michiganders actually on the campaign? And also, can you give me a breakdown of the racial percentages, LGBTQ percentages of the staff?
These are great questions, Shanae, and I wish I had all of that right in front of me in order to answer it for you, but I do not. I will tell you this, that we have had a strong emphasis on hiring Michiganders as much as possible, but to be perfectly honest, we have, I don't know if you've heard about the Bloomberg team, but we've been asked by the DNC to hire some folks who've come off of other campaigns. And so we've done some of that work as well with the DNC support. So we're not a fully Michigan campaign, but we are as much a Michigan campaign as we can be. I can get you those numbers. And we are tracking as much as people are willing to give us that information about racial breakdown and LGBTQ. Happy to share that with you, but I honestly do not have it in front of me right now, and I apologize.
Okay, because I've been in contact with some of the staff and they're from out of state. So it really concerns me that they don't understand the culture of the city and the state. So
yeah. No.
I would encourage people to hire in-house first before we go outside.
Right. I hear you. And I would ask your support in encouraging folks to apply for these jobs.
Oh.
One of the struggles we've had is that we don't get enough applications for these positions. I think if folks have seen me on the road before we all began to shelter in place, I would say that the same 3 white guys apply for every job I post. Please help us get folks to apply. We are absolutely hiring. The jobs are on our website. The more folks that we can hire, the more folks who apply, the larger pool we have, and the easier it is for us to choose Michiganders to fill those jobs.
Thank you.
I will say, I don't know if you remember, we did the Organizing Corps program, which was based on getting college kids here in Michigan trained up last summer to then come on board to be organizers with us here in Michigan. And a good number of those folks are who is coming on board June 1st. So our number of Michiganders will grow exponentially when all of those young folks come on board on June 1st. We're excited to have them.
All righty. We're going to go with Eileen
questions,
Orlansky and then Chuck
anything,
Goldman. So
really.
Eileen, you go first with your question. Eileen Orlansky, go ahead, please. Once you're unmuted.
Muted. Okay.
You're
Can
good,
you hear me now?
Yeah. Yep.
My question
Go ahead,
is,
Eileen. Yeah.
about, we're pushing to, vote. I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead, Eileen.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Your connection's a little weak,
I'm
Eileen.
trying.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what to do about that, but let me see if I can. I don't know what to do about that. So I will just pass.
I can hear you now.
You hear me now?
Yeah, Eileen, I shut off
You
your
can go
video.
ahead and ask your, yeah, sure. Go ahead and ask your question, Eileen. We can all hear you.
Okay. My question is about the voting by absentee. That the president is messing around with the postal service and appointed a new leadership role there. How are we going to make sure that our mail-in absentee ballots are going to get to where they need to be?
It's a really good question, Eileen. So one of the things that we are talking with clerks about, and a lot of clerks are working on, are drop boxes, so that rather than us putting even more burden on the postal service, we have ways for folks to return those ballots that are still safe, still allow for social distancing, but don't require you to use the mail. So what we're hoping for is lots of localities will put a box right outside near the clerk's office where you can just drop that ballot safely and securely into a locked box that they will then empty and receive your ballot. It seems to me that that's the safest, smartest way to make sure that you get that ballot into that clerk's office without us putting even more pressure on an already stretched thin and underfunded postal service that clearly the president does not want to fund because he does not want us to vote.
Is it legal for our club to collect those and drop them in the box, or is there a
It is,
rule or law
it
against
is
that?
not.
Okay.
No, you cannot. We have to voters or members of their immediate family are the only ones who can, or the clerk themselves. But we obviously aren't asking our clerks, I suppose, to go into people's homes and collect ballots, but they can. That is a legal option that the clerks have and that voters have, is to ask for that support.
All righty. Chuck Altman, go ahead with your question, please. And if anybody else has a question, please click that blue raise hand icon or tap it into the chat.
Sure, thanks. I know that lawn signs don't win elections, but last year we could go to one campaign office and get lawn signs for the residents in our precincts. Will there be one campaign offices where we can get lawn signs?
It's a terrific question, Chuck. So yes, we have a plan for about the same number of offices we had open in 2018 to be open again here in 2020. The question we have obviously is, when will we be able to open those offices given the virus? The thing that we're working on now is actually ordering some lawn signs and figuring out how we can get them to folks safely without opening those offices, just in case we don't get to open those offices anytime soon. So we're working through a plan now where we'll have some of our organizers available to just drop the sign in your yard, so that you will have a yard sign if you want it without having to go into an office and pick it up. We're working on it. We'll hopefully have that all set up in the coming weeks.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Then here's a question from our board. How many people participated in the endorsement convention, and are there any plans for in-person Democratic meetings or events right now?
So, excuse me, the endorsement convention didn't happen. So no one participated in the endorsement convention. We ended up canceling it. What we did do was have our elections for district elections for national delegate, which have just wrapped up. We are currently counting the ballots because we allowed folks a mail-in option in addition to the email option. So I don't have a number for how many, but it's large. The spreadsheets I've seen of numbers, there are hundreds of voters who participated, which is terrific participation, I think, for something as unusual as voting for national delegate via email and mail. We currently have no options for, no thoughts for in-person meetings anytime soon. Our next state central committee meeting was scheduled to be in June, is scheduled to be in June. I'm almost positive that that's going to end up being a not in-person meeting. It just won't be safe for that large number of folks to gather, I don't think, by then. We're still working on plans for our August convention, which is scheduled for August 29th and 30th. We have a deposit down on the location for it to be an in-person convention. At the same time, we are working through strategies to make that also a virtual vote, because we are very concerned, obviously, about bringing thousands of folks together given the virus. So right now, we're working on virtual, but planning for in-person at someday when it's safe.
All righty. And Ellen Knopau, you had a question. Go ahead, please, as soon as Lauren unmutes you.
Yeah, okay. Lavora, you talked about the seats that we need to protect, one of them being Gary Peters. I'm very concerned about Gary Peters and the threat of John James. He's in his kind of shadowy campaign right now. Particularly, he's trying to distance himself from Donald Trump. The DeVos family is pouring incredible amounts of money into John James' campaign. What can we do?
We all have to continue to have the conversations with our neighbors, our friends, about the importance of this race. I think it is so easy to get overshadowed by all of the attention on Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Very important, obviously, very, very important. But we have to, as a Democratic family, raise the voice about Gary as well. So having those conversations about him. Take a look at John James Revealed. That's a website that the party has put together where we spend a lot of time talking about the reasons John James is bad for Michigan, and share that information as much as you can. Use it on social media, pass it around so that folks know that John James is indeed bad for Michigan and is so deeply in the pocket of Trump and the DeVosses, and all the things that we here in Michigan know are bad for Michigan can just be lined up right next to John James's name. You're right, this sort of shadow campaign where he hides, where he doesn't do interviews, so folks don't know much about him except that he's got a military record and he seems like a nice guy, is a sneaky way for folks not to learn about who the real John James is. And it's part of our job to make sure that we are raising the roof about how this is not the man for Michigan and we have to protect Gary Peters. So I'm glad you asked about it. Please check out the website, do as much as you can to talk about Gary and the great work he's done as a US Senator and how important it is that we send him back.
All righty. Chuck Rose, you had a question about the security of the drop boxes?
Just wanted, I'll read it off what I wrote. Would someone be watching regarding any drop boxes? And then a comment, I just hope that mail will be an option also, and that we try every possible way to cut off attempts by, I call him Mr. T, to prevent mail-in ballots. One of the ways I think he might try is by declaring some sort of emergency shutdown of the post office in November, or late October and November.
Yeah, we will do everything in our power, including, you know, legal action as a party, as a national party and as a state party to protect that. Mail-in will not go away. You will still always have that option to mail in that ballot. But I do think in the states where the drop boxes are being used extensively, I know that they are locked, and I don't know if they are monitored 24/7. I do know that most of them are close enough to a state building or a county or city building that there are cameras and other sorts of security measures already on those buildings that would also encompass those boxes. And I think that's what makes sense for us. But we will absolutely still be able to mail them in. I just think that there needs to be another option so that perhaps folks are running late even, who want to vote but didn't get it in the mail on time. This is an issue we deal with, that a good number of votes don't get counted because they don't arrive in time. And these drop boxes would actually solve for that as well, because you could just drop it off and not have to worry about the timing of the Postal Service.
Yeah, and people should know in Royal Oak, the drop box is inside City Hall. It's secure and it's got security cameras and stuff. I would not have any qualms about dropping my ballot in there. I do every year just to save the 45 cents. But
I'm surprised by the number of locations that don't do that drop box. We've heard stories of people just like having to leave them on the floor outside the office, or shove them under a door, or leave them on a counter. It is just awful. So we need more localities like Royal Oak that have a nice drop box for folks to use.
All righty, Judith Brea, you had a question? Go ahead. Judith Brea, B-R-E-A. Or a question in the chat oh, go ahead, Judith, I'm sorry. Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, hi, Lavora. I was just wondering whether we're planning any kind of action to unwelcome Donald Trump when he comes to Ypsilanti on Thursday.
So we've got a couple of press calls that we've set up, one Wednesday evening, and then a group of folks are doing something Thursday. The trouble we have is that because we want to all follow the governor's social distancing and other stay-at-home orders, we can't do a rally the way we normally would. Most of the time we would stand outside with our signs and tell him he's not welcome here. It is not safe or prudent for us to do that. So we're going to have to use the media and social media to speak up about that. One of the things that we've started is a hashtag #MyVitalSigns, MIVitalSigns, where folks are holding up what would be their protest sign in a photo on social media. Please do that. Join us in doing that. We'll spread as many of those around. We know he watches Twitter. We know he sees these things. So as much as we can do to make him unwelcome on social media, I think is the way we need to do it, just to be safe. We don't want to ask anyone to go out of their home to do a protest. Thank you, Judith.
Okay, do you suppose any of the UAW folks in the plant might be calling in sick on Thursday?
I don't know. I had a conversation with the UAW earlier and asked the question, how many, because I wasn't even sure how many people are working in the plant right now. I know that they have, they're switched over to making ventilators, but they tell me that it's a full shift of folks. who will be there. So it will be interesting to see if anyone decides that perhaps they're unwell and can't make it in.
Yeah, wouldn't it be interesting if nobody would come to work that day?
Well, the thing that I find fascinating, this president doesn't wear a mask. He doesn't seem to believe in social distancing. He thinks he's safe now because he claims he's taking that drug that's not actually for COVID. But I think that Ford has been very clear that their requirements are that you wear your mask and perhaps even a glove when you're in the building. So it's going to be an interesting visual when everybody else is masked and this man is standing there spreading whatever. But yeah, back to Michigan he comes.
And here's a question we had from the board. As the first female African-American Michigan Democratic Party chair, has race and gender impacted your job and your decision-making?
That's such a great question. Wow. So I'll start with the decision-making. It's good, and it's interesting in light of the question I was asked earlier about staffing. I am very conscious of hiring staff that looks and sounds and feels like Michigan, which means for me, making sure that I am not the only African-American on this team. I was for a while, by the way. And so fixing that for our party, growing our team so that we are more diverse, been very important to me. I will say that the way that it affects me most is that as I travel the state, my heart is warmed by the welcomes I get in parts of the state where, frankly, I thought I might be unwelcome. It reminds me how great people are and how good Democrats are when I travel the state, and folks are still welcoming to me and so thrilled that they have the first African-American woman chairing their party. It makes me very interesting, I think, nationally. So I've gotten to do some national press that perhaps I wouldn't have gotten to do if I wasn't the first here in Michigan. And I've got sisters now all over the country. We have women, African-American women running state parties in a way that we hadn't before. I think there are now 5 of us, maybe 6 of us. So it's an interesting thing, but most of my time, frankly, I spend focused on my one job, which is to win elections up and down the ticket, which has very little to do with race or gender and a lot to do with just getting the work done.
Then we had one more from the board. Does the MDP ever champion policies, and particularly, well, two things we talked about, the horrific race discrepancy in COVID victims with African Americans suffering at much higher percentages, and also just this whole Great Depression too that's occurring right now. So many of our brothers and sisters out of work, living lives of just economic precarity.
Yeah.
Does the MDP get involved in policy making on just like issues like that?
So what we do is try to lift up those stories and lift up our voices about those stories. Very, very early on when we started seeing the numbers of the COVID attack on the Black community, we did a press conference and invited Joe Tate, who is a member of the legislature who suffered from COVID, to participate in a conversation with reporters, sort of lifting the voice and raising awareness of that. And from that, I think, other things have happened, but that's where we started that conversation. We like to talk about issues as they work within our platform, right? The platform of the party. I try not to take the party out on issues where the party as a whole has not spoken up. Occasionally I will, like this one about the effects of COVID. That's not in our platform, obviously, because it's not there, but I feel like it fits nicely in our platform. But I won't take the party out at a position that we have not voted on unless I can find a spot in our platform where I feel like it makes sense. I do think there's a place for us in the issue conversation, and we should be speaking up where it makes sense for us to speak up, and we should be helping our policymakers devote their time and attention to issues that matter to us as a party. That's part of our role, and I will continue to act in the best interest of the party whenever I can in terms of helping to push policy. Absolutely. And you should too, by the way. It's not just me, but all of you should raise your voices around policy issues and make sure that your legislators know what you believe, what you support, and what you'd like to see them fighting for.
Yeah, we have at our club meetings, a lot of people complain that our party does a poor job of messaging, but I always thought it really isn't a messaging thing, it's a push policy thing. If we stand for 100% full employment, we don't have to worry about messaging because that's our message right there, and so on and so on.
Right.
Lauren Jasinski, you had a question. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Lavora. when we go back to our real lives, I'm a high school government teacher. And so I was just curious, I've participated in a few of Michelle Obama's When We All Vote teacher and student initiatives. Is Michigan specifically doing anything to reach out to young and particularly first-time voters? I mean, I know of course we want them, but is there anything happening at the state level?
Right, that's a great question. So one of the projects that I talked to our organizing core kids about, and I should stop calling them kids because they're now about to be college graduates, but kids, was helping us develop programs that help us reach out to those first-time voters. We have chartered high school Dems for the first time and are getting them more and more active in growing that high school program. We obviously have college programs, but I think, could do an even better job of reaching out and having conversations with young folks about the importance of voting as a civic duty, right? And of course, voting Democratic, but the importance of voting as a civic duty. So we're working on developing a program like that. Eventually, I'd love to get us to a place where we are working on that full-time year-round and not just around the elections, because every day someone else turns 18 and should be registering to vote, and we should be having conversations with them about the importance of voting. We're not there yet in terms of that program, but I'd love to get us there, step by step. Great question, though, Lauren. Thank you. And thank you for what you do, Lauren. I love a teacher. My government teacher in high school is the reason I do what I do, by the way. So, love a teacher.
And then again, if you have any questions for Lavora, click that participants icon in the menu and then click the blue raise hand icon, or else you can type your question directly in the chat window. But Ian Duncanson, go ahead, please.
Hi, I have one additional question. That's something that's been on my mind a lot. And I'm sure there's some information and resources on the MDP website, but I'm curious if you can elaborate a little bit on the party platform's position regarding criminal justice reform, specifically how we keep people who shouldn't be behind bars from ending up behind bars because of things like cash bail or marijuana offenses that may have elevated to a felony level that would potentially, under current circumstances, not be an offense that would put you in jail.
Right. I love this question. I can't refer to the platform right now. I can tell you this. I know that we have had so many discussions and so many resolutions around this issue that we have passed and we have moved forward. But the exciting thing, more exciting than what's in our platform, is that we now have elected officials who understand the importance of the issues that you're talking about and are trying to do something about it. I think you've probably seen that Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist and our Supreme Court, particularly Bridget, have put together a task force where they're working on these issues. They talk about, these are things that nobody talked about when the Republicans were in charge, right? And now we have folks who are actually not just talking about it, but working on fixing these problems. And this is what's exciting to me. The platform, we can find what it says in the platform. I'm certain it says that we need to stop cash bail. I'm certain it says that folks who are in jail for minor offenses, like frankly marijuana, where frankly we should be letting them out now because it's now legal. All of that I'm certain is in our platform. But what's most important is that we now have elected officials who are gonna fix it for us. But the big part we have to do is get that legislature, right? Like, we've got our members who understand the issues and will fix these problems, but they can't do it until we get that legislature. Yep, we got to get it done. Good question, Ian. Thank you.
Then we have Karen McDonald on the meeting as well, and Karen had some other words she wanted to amplify on that. Karen McDonald, please go ahead.
Sorry, working out the kinks. Just wanted to chime in about, I'm running for county prosecutor, and my campaign is purely criminal justice reform. And I see a lot of hope for Oakland County and statewide, but especially Oakland County. We have state leaders that are completely behind criminal justice reform. In Oakland County, we have such an opportunity because we have so many resources, and we can lead the state in this effort, which is why I left my position as judge and I'm running for prosecutor. So I know a lot of you are familiar with my platform, but and I've spoken a couple times to this group, but I agree with you. We need to end mass incarceration. And, we've been doing a lot of outreach, and everybody wants to hear this message. Everybody wants, within the party, they want to hear the message. And and in community members, union members, people want solutions rather than just jail or incarceration. So I just wanted to chime in there.
Thanks,
Oakland
Karen.
County will
Thank you,
lead the
Karen,
way.
and I
Yes.
support you a lot. Thank you.
Okay, iPad 2, you had a question about money. iPad 2, go ahead. iPad 2. I didn't have your name, it just says iPad 2. You had a question about money. I'll go ahead and read it. The question was, where are we at money-wise, and how crucial will the comparative funds available to us versus the Republicans be leading up to the November election?
Good, great question. So the Republicans will always have more money than we do. It's a function of who they are and what they believe in and who supports them. But what we do better than they do is spend our money wisely. And frankly, there are more of us than there are of them. So we will knock more doors, we will make more phone calls, and we will work harder than they will. In terms of money-wise for the party, we have, I could pull up the treasurer's report, cash on hand. We have about $1.5 million sitting in the bank that is in our federal hard account. It is there specifically for this work of campaigning. We continue to raise money. The national money is coming in now. We have great support from the DNC to help us cover some of the costs of our field program. I feel good about the fundraising program that we've put together and that we are executing. We've got terrific support from our local folks as well as national folks. I think that the COVID has slowed it down just a tiny bit because folks have tightened their belts a little bit. Some folks aren't working as much as they thought they would. So we will continue to raise money and be aggressive about it to make sure that we have all the funds we need to do the work we have. The coordinated campaign program has a budget of about $8.5 million. We've spent about $1 million of it so far. We will raise it all and we will spend it all.
Okay, Rachel Andrews, go ahead with your question. Rachel Andrews.
Community. I'm curious to know whether the Michigan Democratic Party or what the Michigan Democratic Party is doing to support the Fair and Equal Michigan petition.
Oh, good. Very good question. So as I was telling you all earlier, I try not to take the party out on places that we haven't voted on as a Democratic Party family. But we are supportive of that petition. They've got a couple of asks of us to see if we can help direct folks to sign their online version of their petition, and we're doing some of that work to help support them. Sign it, help them, please, everyone. I think the craziest thing must be trying to get petition signatures in an era where folks are staying at home and staying inside. So anything that you all can do to find that petition online and sign it and pass it around to your friends, please do.
Alrighty, Tim Chikorsky. Tim Chikorsky is our club treasurer. Tim, please go ahead.
I had a question. You mentioned we had $1 million in the
Yep.
federal fund. How far will that really get the party? I mean, we've got candidates here in Oakland County who've raised nearly that much on their own for their personal campaigns.
So that's not what we've raised. That's what we have on hand. We spend it every month. So money goes in and out of the doors every month here at the party because of how the size of our operation. So we are raising about what we spend every month.
Okay.
Raise it, spend it, raise it. It's all I do all day.
You scared me for a minute.
That's all right. Don't be nervous.
Then does anybody else have any questions for Lavora? Right now, I don't have any raise hand icons and there's nothing in the chat window. If you had a question for Lavora, now's a good chance to ask it. But Lavora, while we'll just ask you this while we're waiting to see if anybody else has anything else. You mentioned your background and your upbringing, and that sounded interesting. Why don't you go ahead and tell us about that?
So I'm originally from Virginia. I grew up there, went to college there, started working in politics in Virginia thanks to that terrific government teacher who told me that I seemed like I should be a politician. But I didn't want to be out front, so I ended up in the background. So worked on local races all over the state of Michigan, ended up at the White House in the Clinton administration where I worked in the Office of Media Affairs. One of my favorite jobs ever. And then I came to Michigan with my husband, who took a job with the Michigan Education Association. First job here in Michigan was with the State House, where eventually I was the political and communications director for the Democrats in the House. I spent about 7 years with the State House before leaving to spend an odd year working for Blue Cross Blue Shield. And I say it's odd because it's the only time I haven't worked directly in politics. I got bored very quickly, which is why it was only a year. Then in 2012, I was the state director for the Obama campaign. After the Obama campaign, someone you all know very well, who's a dear friend of mine, Lisa Brown, asked me to join her in Oakland County, and I was Lisa's deputy clerk and register of deeds for several years. One a terrific place to be because Lisa is a good friend. And then in 2015, I came to the party. I originally was going to run for chair. I spent about 4 minutes running for chair, and then my friend Brandon Dillon was running for chair, and we decided to come to the party together. So I came as the chief operating officer in 2015, and I've been here since, was elected chair in last February, and here I am. All I know is politics. It's all I do.
Then I'll finish up with a question Amy Goodman always asks her guests. She's the host of Democracy Now!, the nationwide progressive news show. But she always asks, what gives you hope? What makes you optimistic?
So I have two things. One you're all going to think is cheesy because I'm going to say it's all of you. And it's meetings like this and groups like this. It's a fact that 50-some people decided to get on a Zoom call on a Tuesday evening to listen to the chair of the party talk about elections and the importance of working hard to elect Democrats up and down the ballot. That gives me hope. The other thing that gives me hope are the 3 terrific kids I've got in this house right here. I do this work in part because I believe so strongly in making a better country and a better Michigan for them. I want them to stay here in Michigan and work here in Michigan and thrive here in Michigan. And I think the way we do that is electing good Democrats up and down the ticket. And the way I help do that is to do this work I do at the party. And I love it.
Great. I think that was it. I don't see any other raise hand icons. I don't see any other questions in the chat. So I guess we'll let you go back to your kids. Lavora, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We just enjoyed having you here a long time. Everybody give a wave of a hand to Lavora before she goes off.
Thank you all so much for being here. I appreciate you, and thanks for all you're about to do. It's going to be a long one.
Thank you very much, Lavora.
Thank you.